So just a quick poll. Who went to the ISSA meet and heard me talk about this before? All right, you guys can leave. So, all right. So since I've given this talk before, I'm going to let Nick do most of the talking tonight. Yeah. So since this is his first time speaking, so everyone give Nick a really big round of applause here. Yeah. First time speaker. So, all right. So we're going to talk about the OSCP, offensive security. So full disclosure, I took this in January. Nick took it in.
I started in
April. So, and he now works for offensive security. So he's getting paid. No, to be here, right? No, is that how that works?
Yeah, no, I'm not getting paid to be here.
Okay, so there we go. There we go. We got that all that out of the way. So, all right. So just a really quick intro. So my name is Nate Subra. I've done IT for a long time, security for about 5 years. I do penetration testing right now. My wife made me put that disclaimer up there. And anything I talk about tonight is I also work for the Air National Guard. So none of my all of my opinions are my own and not anyone else's. So. Yeah, an overly opinionated pen tester, as you're going to find out. All right, here you go.
Hey, so my name is Nick Beecham. As Nate mentioned, I currently work for Offensive Security as a student tech administrator. So the same disclaimer as Nate, these opinions are my own and not that of my employer. They also made me say that. I have about 10 years in IT. I've been in security for about a year now. So yeah, that's me. All right. Hold back there, bud.
Please hold.
What'd you do?
You opened Finder.
I hit the button, but
there we
go. Okay. Anyway, another disclaimer before we actually get started is that offensive security does have a strict academic policy. That means no cheating on the exam. Or you'll get banned for life, and they'll strip you of any certifications that you do have. So we won't actually give any spoilers on the exam or in the labs, because they would hate me and probably fire me.
Yeah, so sorry for a little light on screenshots and content, so we kind of have to talk around some stuff. Hopefully we'll give you guys a pretty good kind of snapshot of how it works, but yeah, so there's a lot of stuff we can't talk about, so just a heads up.
Right. So the OSCP is the Offensive Security Certified Professional. It's the certification that you get after passing the exam, after you take the penetration testing with Kali Linux course. Again, it's offered by Offensive Security. It's one of, I think, about 6. I don't know off the top of my head certifications they have. I should know off the top of my head because I work there. The course itself, you get the PDF and videos. The PDF is about 350 pages long and about 8 hours of videos.
They fit the entire security information on the internet in 350 pages.
Right. So you learn everything in that PDF. Everything. You don't have to do your own research to do the labs. No, as Nate noted there, it's not all inclusive. So you do have to do your own research. You have to try harder, as they say. It's not going to teach you everything you need to know. Including the course material, you also get access to the lab. The lab helps you complete the hands-on exercises in the PDF. It consists of 4 networks, and it's meant to mimic a very highly vulnerable enterprise network. With that being said, there's a little over 50 systems that are hackable. It's got a good, decent mix of Windows and Linux systems. They do provide a VM for you to use. It's a custom-built virtual machine. I recommend you use it. I don't recommend you build your own, as Nate noted here. And that's because the VM was designed to work with the labs. So you might run into problems with the exercises or some of the material if you don't use it.
And just as an aside, the lab is probably one of the most valuable things you can, probably the most valuable part of the money that you spend. So.
Right. So with that, you can get 30, 60, or 90-day lab time. Most people go with 30 and then realize they need to extend because they don't have enough time. Like I said, there's over 50 systems in the lab across 4 networks, so you're going to spend some time on it. I didn't know you had this slide in here. This is new. But yeah, here's the cost stuff, if you really care. You can also go online and see it. It's decent price for what you get. Like I said, the material is short and condensed, but you get access to the lab, which really helps.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at the pricing, so it's like talked about, so everyone knows what a SANS course costs, right? So I poke managers all the time about this. You can send 5 employees to get a 90-day OSCP lab, certified for the cost of one SANS course. I mean, pretty good bang for your buck, right? So, and that includes the 40 CPE credits. So there's actually some pretty good money. Now, the one thing I will caveat, and I said this at ISSA, if you do buy this for your employee, understand that this is going to consume their life for 90 days. They're probably going to get divorced, become an alcoholic. So just give them a little space if you do that. So understand that there's probably a 4 to 6 hour day commitment for 30 to 40 days. So at a minimum.
Only 4 to 6 hours? Okay. Yeah, I spent about 9. My wife is watching, actually, so she's probably writing up the divorce papers right now. A note on the CPE credits, you don't have to take the exam to get the CPE credits. So if you don't want to take the exam for any reason, you can still turn in your exercise reports and all that stuff and get the CPE credits. We already covered this. Like I said, time requirements, he only spent 2 to 4 hours because he's better than me. I spent about 8 a day, and on the weekends probably 16 because I have no life.
That's a 2 to 4 hour average. What he's not telling you is I paid. I had 90 days paid for by my employer, and then I paid for an additional 45, and I probably only actually used 50 days of lab. So it averaged out to about 2 to 4 hours a day. So it was more like there are at least probably 10 to 11 days of it's only 9 o'clock. I almost got this box, and holy shit, it's 4:30 in the morning. So yeah.
Yeah, what helped was my wife worked nights, so I didn't have to worry about her hounding me to get off the computer. So the exam itself is brutal. It's a point-based exam with 5 machines. You have to get 70 points in 24 hours. Each machine has varying point values. I can't give you what those point values are, but it's there. And with that, there is strict documentation. So at the end of your exam, you have another 24 hours to write a professional penetration test report with the required documentation. And note that there are some technology restrictions. So you can't use Metasploit on any but one box. You can't use automation tools such as SQL Map or Nessus and stuff like that.
Yeah, it sounds bad, but by the time you get to the exam, you'll probably be an old hat doing stuff manually. So just a quick disclaimer about the Metasploit stuff. So there are some Metasploit stuff you can use, like multi-handler, like you can catch shells, etc. So it's more on the actual exploits. So don't be scared.
Again, there's the recommended experience. This is a hard one to answer because technically you don't need any experience to do the labs or the course, but you probably should at least know something or you're going to struggle. So basic networking, know a scripting language. Doesn't mean you have to write it, offhand, but know how to read some kind of scripting language. C is used the most. Python is used the most. As far as assembly language, just learn a few of the opcodes because there are buffer overflows are covered quite extensively in the material. It's offensive security's bread and butter, so they like to cover it. And then Metasploit and other stuff. Like I said, some basic experience. You just don't need to be perfect at it. So yeah, everyone should take it. I might be biased on that, but everyone should take it.
I agree with his bias. So I did blue team for the first half of my information security and the latter half of my IT career. So I've only recently started the pen testing gig. So, and honestly, I've seen a pretty big difference from people who work on the defensive side and take this and just have a better understanding of how attacks are executed and how to better defend against them. So. And I like to tell everyone that the OSCP is actually not anything to do with hacking. It's an exam about critical thinking and reading skills. So that's probably the biggest mistake I see people making in it. So if you like logic puzzles, you will love the OSCP.
So yeah, the stuff that's actually covered in the course, common tools, usage. So it starts out with information gathering, enumeration, exploitation, the basic stuff when it comes to hacking or penetration testing. Stuff that the course doesn't explicitly cover, but you will pick up on because you're doing the labs, how to write your documentation and how to write your notes, make checklists. You'll pick up on things, what you need to cover, and eventually you'll just throw that into a checklist as Nate has here. I personally don't use checklists, but I probably should. And then critical thinking. Like Nate said, it's not so much a technical course on how to do things. It's getting you into that mindset of how to do things when it comes to penetration testing. So offensive security can't show you every single tool to use, but it's up to you to kind of break out of that mindset of a linear thinking. I'm gonna hack this box, but get into it. Better habits.
Roundabout fashion.
Critical thinking. And I'm going to let Nate talk on this because he has more experience in penetration.
Yeah, so I've been in red team for a couple years before I actually took the OSCP, and I thought I was pretty smart. And then I spent about 40-some days in the labs and realized I wasn't as smart as I thought. So, but some nitpicky things that we'll talk about that they don't cover. There's not really a whole lot of talk about tradecraft still. So you do a couple payload wraps. Forensics guys would have a field day with any of the machines that you actually hack in the lab because you don't do cleanup, you don't actually take care to record IOCs, et cetera, et cetera. So firewall and IDS evasion, there's a little bit of firewall evasion, IDS not really. And post-ex, that was kind of a big complaint for me. Is a lot of people, I know a lot of people that can actually get out of a box, and they go, what do I do now? So there's kind of a big gap there. I think that's my critique of it. So one of the things, and this isn't really a negative thing, but a lot of the technologies in the lab are older. So there's a pretty common saying about like if you take the OSCP to the lab, you'll understand probably the last 10 years of all the big headline hacks. Probably pretty true. So, but they're still very valuable to understand. You'll do SQL injections, you'll do a myriad of different exploits. So, and then persistence in C2, which is very important in red team tradecraft and testing tradecraft mostly. So they don't really teach a bit of that. So really kind of a first jump in actually getting into the box and poking around. But so there is other work that you'll want to do after the OSCP.
So yeah, some things you want to focus on when you are doing the labs and the course material is understanding the tools that you're using. The course is going to show you some commands for some tools, but it's up to you to understand what those tools are doing and what other options those tools have, because like Nmap, for example, it can do more than just scan for open ports. It has a scripting engine, so it can scan for known vulnerabilities, or like it has here, it can craft packets with Scapy, there we go. And it can also do some basic exploits.
Anyone get affected by the struts exploit last week? There was an Nmap exploit out for it before there was a Metasploit mod.
Yep. So yeah, understand the tools that you're using, or write your own. I didn't really write my own tool, but I wrote a wrapper around a lot of tools. Because you're going to find that you do something a lot, so you might as well just script it. For example, the tool that I did write was just the way that I did my initial scan on the machine. So instead of doing an initial scan and then scanning more ports and then more ports, I just did a quick scan, to scan all open ports, and then do a more service verification scan on those open ports that I found. And instead of having to type in 5 or 6 commands just to do all that, I wrote a wrapper around it to do it once instead of 5 or 6 times. And it'll help you. But there are going to be other tools out there that are already like that. So the one that I wrote, there is one already out there like that. It's called 1-2 Punch. So
yeah, and there's I kind of did the same thing. I wrote my own enumeration engine, and then I didn't use it.
Yeah, I didn't use mine on the exam either. So.
So just understand that there's a trade-off, and sometimes you're better off not spending time debugging your code.
Yeah, I spent about a week on mine, and then I never used it. I used it in the labs, but not in the exam itself. This is important documentation, taking notes. If you don't take notes, you're going to lose yourself. I mean, because of the way the labs are set up, it's a shared environment, so any student can come along and revert that machine and kick you out of it when you're halfway through. So if you don't have good notes to start with, you're going to have to figure out how to get back in again. So pick something. A lot of people use Keep Note, Cherry Note's good. I just use text files because I'm lazy and I don't like switching out of the terminal. I think Nate used Cherry Note. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I was a big fan of Cherry Tree because it has syntax highlighting, so I was just using it for my ID as well. So
And if you start with Keep Note and go to Cherry Tree, you can import Keep Note into Cherry Tree, so that helps. But yeah, like I said, important note taking. Take screenshots of everything, all of your enumeration scans, all your nmap scans, dump them into a text file or take a screenshot of it. And again, on that point, because it's a shared lab environment, you have to revert the machine before you start scanning it. And if you didn't, go back and scan it again because something may have changed. And that happens a lot to students, so that's important. And when it comes to writing your reports, you want to have good screenshots on how you did something. I'm going to let Nate talk on this because this is his format.
So this is kind of this is where that overly opinionated part comes in. So one of the things that I did is I started out taking notes, and I thought I was taking pretty good notes. But when I went back to redo stuff and actually do documentation, they were not good notes. So just understand formatting is important. Being organized is important. I started breaking mine down into basically attack phases. So enumeration, actual notes. Having a narrative is great. When you're up working on a box until 4:30 in the morning, and then you go back and work on it that evening, and you're like, what the hell was I doing? I have no clue. I'm looking at this kludgy code, and yeah, it doesn't even run. So yeah, it's just a good idea to record it. And the big thing too is that really kind of helped me in my day job too is I actually record what didn't work. So I started using script to record all of my output. There's actually a Python script called iTurn2 that'll hook into your bash. So it'll actually grab every bash session that you open, or CSH. And start recording that to a file and using that as part of my narrative too. But it's just a good idea. Anyone do like rubber ducky coding? You actually walking through code. This is the same thing with hacking. So you can rubber ducky hack and actually walk through like, why am I trying to exploit a box this way? You'll find out why you're doing stupid things really quickly. So, but yeah, good note taking, formatting. Basically what it boiled down to was, can somebody else read my notes, understand what was going on, when I ran something, why I ran something. So that's why it ended up with this format. So.
All right, another good note on notes, pun intended. So the student tech admins, or what I do, is we're there to help if you get stuck on a certain machine. So you can come to support and ask us questions and, well, tell us what you did and we'll ask you questions pretty much. So if you don't have good notes and we don't know exactly what you've done or what you were planning on doing, then, we'll tell you have to go take good notes. Because it's, like he said, the rubber ducky situation. It's important to be able to talk yourself through it and talk another person through it. So if you don't have good notes, you're not going to be able to do that. Because we will ask, what have you done so far? And if you don't know, then we don't know. But I don't agree with that first point.
So yeah, this is opinion. So one of the things I tried to do when I first started out was there's actually a report. Everyone's probably seen a pen testing report of some kind. Mm-hmm. So don't try and write that as you go. That's more of a mistake that I made. That doesn't work for me. So and again, this is the land of opinion. So
right.
So yeah, my motto is to make my be able to take robust enough notes that I could basically make a report from them. So go back historically. Nick, I think, probably had a little bit better method. So he actually took notes that he turned into his report because he was using LaTeX and Markdown, which is awesome.
Right. Yeah. No, I used a system that I called Saruman because I'm lazy and I like good names. It was the super awesome report unification method and Nazguls. But no, I did write my report as I went because I just dropped all my. Once I finished with the machine, I combined all my notes into a little report blurb that was written in Markdown that I could then just, format into a report later. Like I said, using LaTeX and Pandoc, which is awesome. But yeah, that's how I did it. Some people don't like writing a report as they go. Another note on reports, I guess. I don't know if we skipped it or if it's later, but you do get extra credit points if you turn in a lab report and an exercise report. So it's important that you do take notes on the lab machines that you do hack because you can get 5 extra credit points if you turn in that lab report, which you want to do. But yeah, enumeration. This is probably the most important thing about the course, or the labs. When you're going through the labs, don't just try to hack the box. you got to learn the target first before you can actually exploit it. So you want to get as much information as possible first. So run your Nmap scans and then identify which ports are open and then run more scans on those, using the various different tools that you can.
Yeah, basically between you and me and Nick over there, he's not really here. So the entire lab is basically built to fuck you if you make assumptions. So just getting that mindset. So the scenario down there, like Windows 2000, everyone's like, oh, easy, this is cake, this thing, I want to pop this open. A couple hours later, unnamed person might have still been working on that and then realized that it was the default FTP password to get onto that box. You have to understand that, the entire course is really designed to challenge you and make you look at the big picture and kind of work through things, bullet point at a time.
Right, yeah. No, it is designed to fuck you, for sure. Each machine is going to give you a different lesson. So not all two machines are the same. There might be more than one machine that's vulnerable to the same thing, but not in the same way. You might have to execute it differently. And that's where it's important to really enumerate and understand the target that you're working on. Like he has here, your staged Nmap scans, enumerate each port, everything I said.
Yeah, and just a quick point. So one of the things, doing penetration testing, I had gotten a little lazy. So a lot of Windows networks are exactly the same. Like, oh, I have admin on one box, I have admin on every box. It's literally pop one and pivot to DA and you win. So that was a big reset for me. I actually had to kind of work for a living again. So it was nice. But yeah, it definitely kind of, it's a good reset, even if you do this for a living. If you're looking to get back some of that old spark a little bit. So to kind of get back into the being challenged, it was actually pretty refreshing.
Right. No, we did design it so that you can't just hack one box and have them all. You really have to put some thought into it, especially in the other networks that you have to pivot into and everything. So, but yeah, these are some tips that he has here. Like I said, enumerate each port. Don't just assume that a port is what you think it is. So if it's port, 8080, you might think that's just HTTP or it's a proxy or whatever. It might not be. And you really want to scan every single port. Don't just do a default scan and assume that's all that's open. So you want to do them all because there are going to be some hidden ports out there. Again, like I said, designed to fuck you.
Yeah. Did you know that not every application is coded correctly, and sometimes when you're on an Nmap scan, it'll tell you that the port's wrapped because you said it, and that's just the application trying to fuck you. So, saying.
Then exploitation. So after you've done your enumeration and you know everything about the target, then you can start to exploit it. You really need to know everything. And it goes back to enumeration. I'm not going to say that enough tonight. But that's probably the most important thing you need to learn is how to enumerate a target. It is a lab offered by Offensive Security, so almost everything's going to be on ExploitDB or the built-in tool called SearchBloit, which uses ExploitDB anyway. So, and again, on documentation, note everything that you do try. Even if it doesn't work, just note it because you might try it again later. And even if you did note it, you're still going to try it again later because, after you, as you said, 4 a.m. in the morning, you're gonna do it again later. And yeah,
it might work later too.
And it probably will. There are a few that it might work if you try it a second time. And yeah, versions matter. Just because there's an exploit out for version 2.0 doesn't mean it's going to work on 1.9. So pay attention and do your research. Here's some tools he used. This is mostly the ones I used. I'm a big fan of curl, so I use curl for almost everything when it comes to web. Metasploit, just because there's a restriction in the exam doesn't mean you shouldn't use it. I encourage you to use it in the labs because it's a great tool to learn and everybody uses it. But if you do use it in the labs, try to go back and manually do it, without using Metasploit.
Yeah, definitely. So, and that's one thing. There's like two factions of students, and one's like, I'm never using Metasploit, and the other side's like, why wouldn't you use Metasploit? So I fall in the latter camp. And if you, most pen test teams will still use Metasploit. So, and there's usually 2 or 3 tool sets: Empire, Metasploit, Cobalt Strike, custom stuff. So why would you screw yourself out of the opportunity to learn using a tool? So that's kind of how I look at it. So But there's definitely, you don't want to pop a box using an exploit and then not understand what you actually did. So yeah, still go back and do it manually, but take every opportunity that's given to you. So.
Right, and remember that Metasploit is open source, so you can look at the modules. I mean, you can look at the codes, and I suggest you do that, or run Wireshark while you run the exploit as well. You're going to use netcat a lot. A lot of people want to use Beef for client-side exploits, but don't. It doesn't work, first off, in the Kali VM, in the PWK VM. And
it's a lazy way.
It's lazy. You really, for client-side exploits, it's better to know the target. And then, privilege escalation. This is another thing that isn't covered very well in the course material, and I work there, so I'm going to say that. It needs to be covered very well. It just goes back to exploiting the target initially. You got to do your enumeration, look at everything, and see what's on the system. The best way for me to do that is I rule out all the default stuff first, So it's easier to look at a target and say, this belongs here, and I know this belongs here, and that's where the experience comes in. If you've worked on Linux systems or you've worked on Windows systems, you know what belongs there, so rule that out. But again, the labs are designed to fuck you, so there might be something there, so don't make assumptions. There are a couple of resources here, Fuzzy Security and Got Milk's blog. They're good. They're not all-inclusive, but they're good. They kind of cover some basic stuff. Windows is probably the hardest stuff to escalate on for me. A lot of people, not so much, but for me, I hate Windows. And then, post-exploitation, which isn't covered at all. So after you get system on a box, or after you get root on a box, you want to find the interesting stuff. So you want to look at, the who's connecting to the box. Are there any password files that you can get to and stuff like that? And can you pivot from that box? Like I said, there are four networks. So some of the machines are dual home. They are in other networks, and some just act as routers. So you might be able to pivot into another network from that box. So pay attention. And then I don't know if Nate had anything to add on this.
Yeah, no, I mean, so pretty much kind of a spray and pray here on the screen, but, just always consider, you got to consider all the angles. I lost count of the number of times of like, I SQL injected in this box, now I have system, then I didn't go back and dump the SQL database for a reason. 4 a.m. is a weird time. So, but yeah, so this is why I'm a big checklist person, probably because I hate sleep. So,
right.
So just, it's always poke around a little bit. It pays to be curious.
Right, and if you're on a client, look at the browser stuff. Pull down there might be saved passwords in the browser too. Stuff like that. It's stuff you don't think of when you're actually doing it, but you do later, and then you kick yourself because you're going through 30 different machines to find a way to get into another network or do some client-side exploit. This is his methodology. It's yours. It says my methodology.
Yeah.
But make a checklist. It does help. I don't have a formal checklist, but I just have something in my mind.
So when I say checklist, I'm not talking about something that you stick to strictly. I'm talking about something that is going to give you an idea of how to proceed at 4:30 in the morning. So, and something that you can check off at 4:30 in the morning to remember what the hell you were doing 15 minutes ago. And that, so everyone's like, checklist, that means rules and strict, and it's like, no, it's like having the manual. We all know stuff works exactly how it's advertised in the manual, so, and we follow that strictly all the time, not, right? So, it's just, give yourself some rope to unhang yourself or to haul yourself back up when you do get stuck. There were numerous times that, I forgot to check for something really simple, and it's because I, number one, made an assumption and it jumped to a conclusion. So, at least having that checklist, you can reset your frame of mind and, kind of start over again. Yep, I skipped a couple steps, and that's why I was stuck on this for 8 hours versus 10 minutes.
And another good note in here is if you get stuck, move on. I set myself with a 4-hour timer on each box. It might not be a lot to some people, but if I got stuck for 4 hours, if I made no progress after 4 hours, I'm going to go to a different box, because clearly I have tunnel vision at that point. So that is a good thing to point out, is if you're stuck, just do a different target or go for a walk, get some water, enjoy your life.
And so one thing I'll note is if you do penetration testing in real time, the difference between the labs that almost makes it maddening is that every box can be Doing a penetration test, you don't know that. So you're sitting there going, in the real world, you actually move on quicker. This one, you're like, it's this, it's obviously this. Why can't I get in? And you'll end up wasting a ton of time. So not every box in the lab is directly exploitable. There are XP machines that you cannot get into. So I mean, it's common, you know. So use common sense. So
right. And again, these are his slides. Thank you for letting me use your slides. I agree with most of this, but yeah, a checklist. Don't stick to the checklist strictly speaking, but at least have something written down or know how you're going to proceed with something. Don't always go off of hunches because they won't always work. Again, to the prior example, just because it's a Windows 2000 box doesn't mean an SMB exploit's going to work on it. Don't try to rush things, because the faster you go, the more information you're going to miss. I mean, just because you ran one or two tools on a port and then moved on, you may have missed using a tool on a port, or you may have not even read the information that you got. You just dumped it into a text file and moved on, which I did a lot. And again, documentation, that's a big thing. And spoilers, don't give them. I'll be mad at you. It's okay to be part of a community, you know, and talk about certain tools and techniques, or ask a question, but don't specifically say, hey, how do I do this machine? Because you're only hurting yourself when you do that. If somebody says, oh, you got to look at the HTTP service. It's like, all right, well, I'm going to miss all of that experience I could have gained by looking at all the other services and ruling them out. So, yeah, don't ask for spoilers. With that being said, there are some study groups. There's the forums, of course, which we moderate. We do take spoilers out, which people hate, but, you know.
Yeah, the Offsec forums looks like a redacted CIA memo. It's I found spoiler on spoiler, and you can do spoiler to spoiler to spoiler. It's great. So so there is the NetSec Focus Slack, so which I think is great. There's really good community. There's actually about 5,000 information security professionals in that Slack. So the rollover on that's crazy, but there are Offsec people in the channel though. Don't be stupid.
I don't know. Well, one just joined it without even changing his name, so everybody knows that he's in there. There's the IRC channel on Freenode. Again, we're in there, so you're not going to post spoilers there.
And the big point is, I mean, lab spoilers technically, I don't even know, there's no hard rule against
right. So
lab spoilers versus exam, but you're really just ruining it for yourself. You are costing yourself. I mean, like that. I mean, if somebody posted something, I would be angry, frankly, because of that. Because I mean, so some people, that's how they think they need to learn, and that's not right, in my opinion. But so just try and. I mean, the cert is very valuable. It's probably one of the best in the industry, right? In my opinion, right now. So just try and hold on to that. You know, we're trying to maintain that integrity of the cert.
Right, and as you mentioned, the lab spoilers aren't covered under the academic policy. It's strictly for the exam. But again, we don't encourage it, and you're just hurting yourself if you're seeking spoilers. So just don't do it. I mean, these groups are okay to join. You know, to talk about techniques and stuff. If you ask it in a general way, so how do I do X, you know, whatever. Don't say, how do I do this on this machine? Because somebody will give you the answer, and then you're just hurting yourself. And then, last thoughts, again, make the checklist.
I like checklists.
Apparently. Yeah, use the lab to learn. Just because you got root or system on a box, don't walk away from it. Some of the boxes do have multiple vulnerabilities, so there are different ways in on each box. And once you get root or system, you know, it's easier to find that other way in. So take your time with the post-exploitation and all that, and look around. And again, use Metasploit. Yeah, so.
Yeah, and opposite of that too, if you use the manual method, check Metasploit. So see if there's a way to like, I had a lot of guys that they're like, I have no idea how to use multi-handler. Like I use Netcat for all my shells, and I'm like, that's fun. So you lose out on a lot of fun stuff, understanding how to use Interpreter and other fun things that Metasploit has.
Right, and using Interpreter is allowed on the exam. Just some of the modules you can't use within Interpreter. So Git system, obviously, you can't use. And I think that's it. There's one thing that's not on here is the exam itself. Like I said, it's grueling. It's 24 hours. you kind of want to prepare yourself for it, so get some water. Don't do what I did. I got a case of Monster, and I drank 2 before my exam started. So I was jittery to start with. And
so Nick took his before, like 3 months before mine. So I was like totally like, so I had a beer 8 hours in, and it worked fantastic.
yeah, you know. And it, you know, the lab, like I said, there's 50 plus machines, but you don't have to have all of them to be successful in the exam. You should have a good handful. You know, you're not going to just do 2 of them and do the exam and pass. So take your time in the exam, go for a walk, take a break. Don't sit there for, 20 hours, because you're going to get tired in tunnel vision. And drink water, not 10 Monsters.
And like we talked about it before, but go slow to go fast. So I purposely made myself like enumerate every box before I started poking on the exam. So I didn't actually get into a box for probably over 4 hours. So, this is totally Nate's opinion again, but if you can get around 40 some boxes in the lab, you're probably more than ready for the exam-ish. So like somewhere around in there, like more than half, less than 100%.
Officially, we recommend you get all of the public network boxes, but that does require you to get some of the other networks anyway. So
well, go for Humble.
yeah, there are 3 machines that are relatively hard.
Just one.
Okay, 1 is really hard. There's 3 that the staff doesn't offer support on, which is Pain, Sufferance, and Humble. Humble's the hardest. But yeah, so it's fun. It's a good cert. I enjoy it mostly because it's a hands-on cert. You know, the test itself is hands-on. You're not just going to read a book and take some multi-choice test. So that's what gives it its value to me. I recommend it to everybody. So
yeah. So if you guys have any more questions, we're going to wrap up here. Feel free to come and grab us. Otherwise, jump in the Slack and feel free to PM either of us. So NS and Slack.
I'm towing.
Yeah, I can never say it, so words are hard. So, all right, thank you for your guys' time.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break. So grab some pizza, some drinks, and we'll see you in 5 minutes.